Namaste, and welcome to the final episode of the four-part series. Namaste, and welcome to the fourth and final episode of the Vani Virtual Samarop. Thank you to everyone joining at home. Please submit your questions into the YouTube channel below. Very excited to be hosting this. We've got Jeel Shah, and he's got a very prominent topic about values in a post-truth world. Jeel, namaste. How are you doing this evening?
Namaste, Sumit. Doing really well. Excited for the speech. What can I say?
Awesome, awesome. And when prepping for a speech like this, what kind of things are going through your mind? How are you prepping?
I think there's two things to basically prepping for a speech. One is you have to think of your audience. I always like to remember that when you're speaking, you're often speaking to inspire a change. So, sometimes that is more important than the actual content of the speech. So sometimes content is, while it's important, it is secondary. It's not everything. It's how you sort of deliver the speech. So prepping just involves a lot of practice, really, lots of tweaking.
Yeah, I think that's true, right? It's the constant iteration of your message. So, you might have something that you want to say, and take your audience from one place to the other, and it's about how you get them there on that journey. So how do you go about selecting topics for speeches that you want to speak about?
I think I'm one of those guys who's quite guilty about not being good at that, because I like to talk about a lot of things and I'm very curious in general. So I'm probably guilty about not being good at that. But I like to select topics that are interesting for obvious reasons, because that I can delve deeper into them, learn about more about them, and I like to select topics that I can quite relate to the modern world today, like the world that we live in today, something that affects me tomorrow, for example. That's just as a personal preference.
Yeah, it's important to be speaking about topics that are relevant, not just to your audience, but yourself as well, right? I think you can give a much truer message with content that you know and live and breathe, which is why I think this topic will be quite interesting for the speech that you're about to deliver. What do you, if you look back across the Vani experience that you've had so far when we first started out, what would you say has been the most sort of memorable experience for you?
Oh, memorable experience. I'd say that this is a memorable experience. I think there's been quite a few. It's a bit of a tricky one. I think you see this year in the public speaking program has been a bit difficult, because we started off doing things in person and now we're doing things online. But when we were in person, and I remember there was an abhyas work of one of the weekends, it might be the second one, we had to prepare a speech, and then we had to practice. And I learned that you can practice a speech in like 10 different ways. And I remember one specific thing you did, actually. Okay, it's like we had to start off our introduction of a speech for the first 2 minutes, and at the 2-minute point you would cut everyone off. We were in different corners of a hall, and then we had to do it again, but this time do it with eyes closed. Next time do it with miming only. Next time do it without saying anything and just using body language. And each and every time you would prompt us to use a different way to convey the message. I think that was very memorable. That was truly unique.
Yeah, there's a lot of great memories from those abhyas folks. And yeah, even when you're practicing something, it's not just about the words that are coming out. It's not even just about the thoughts that you have. Our body communicates in different ways, and even the tone, pitch, volume, many elements make up a great speaker indeed. Okay, so that was maybe your most memorable. What would you say has been the most difficult part of the entire program?
Difficult part, I would say that has been, I think that's been finding the will to practice. I'll be honest. I think it's been finding the will to practice, because sometimes it's easy to say things, but when you actually have to do it, especially in your own time where you have to hold yourself accountable, that's been difficult for me. And that's me being completely honest here.
Thanks for that. And I totally resonate. It has been trivial times. And I think, with the current crisis, I would say, that's happening at the moment. Things have been very difficult. And you make a fair point about we used to get, we physically met and we're thinking about talking on stage. So trying to do that now in a virtual capacity, I think has been a challenge for this cohort in particular. So thank you to everyone that are leaving comments on YouTube online. I encourage you to do more. If you've got any questions for GLG, please jot them down. Please let us know where in the world you are tuning in from. And if you have any questions about Viney Speakers Academy, about public speaking and how we can get some top tips out of Jeel. Okay, Georgie, so we're coming quite close up to the point where you're going to deliver your final bit. And I think I speak for everyone that's been on the Viney platform. This is the end of the beginning. This is your final piece that sort of shows the Samaj, some of the work that you've been working on. What would you say this particular speech is aiming to do? What are some of the drivers that you have for picking this topic?
I think this particular topic is very much relevant in today's world because of a lot of things that are happening around us. I won't give too much away, but what it's aiming to do is every time you make a decision about having a particular opinion, where you're on a fence and you're leaning towards a particular opinion, hopefully at the end of this speech, you will think a couple more times before making that opinion solid. So that's the aim here. The aim is to think more in a clear way before without giving too much away on the speech.
Yeah, sure. It's true though, right? And if you look at how fast information is spreading, we all get those WhatsApp messages and we don't know whether they're valid or not. Okay, cool. Listen, I think the audience at home are waiting to go. They're waiting to hear your piece. So to the audience, actually, while Georgie is presenting his speech, please leave your topics, leave your comments. We're all here to live and learn from each other. So if there's anything that Georgie does that stands out for you, that rings true for you, I'd like you to leave some commentary up on YouTube. And if there's any questions that come to mind about what Georgie is talking about the topic, about his speech delivery, maybe there's something he does and you think, how did you practice doing that? How did you try to make this effective? Anything that comes to mind, please jot that down. We are going to learn and live with each other. Right, without further ado, and for the final time in the second cohort for Viney Speakers Academy, V2, I'm very proud and privileged to introduce to you Jeel Shah with the topic, values in a post-truth world. Over to you, Jeel. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Sumit. Audience at home, here's a question for you. How do you handle a global pandemic in the age of fake news? Back in March, we would see headlines such as, "This is a conspiracy from the East." A few months forward in the summer, my mom's favorite headline was, "You can cure it by drinking warm water daily. Maybe it works." And right now, we're playing a completely different ballgame. Now you're getting headlines such as, "The vaccines, don't take the vaccines." There are groups out there that are minimizing the efforts that people are putting in to do this. It almost feels like we're going from an age of information into the disinformation age. Let that sink in for a second. I did use the word disinformation because disinformation is false. Disinformation is misleading, and disinformation is spread deliberately to deceive. I want you to take a look at the last 3-4 years. There is something shifting in the fabric that the world we're currently living in. You're getting lots of issues popping up, rightly so. And in addition to that, you're getting protests on everything from climate change to anti-vaccinations to elections being rigged, for example. What is causing all of these things to happen at once? When you look around you, I don't know how you feel. I sometimes feel that the world is going a little bit crazy. And I feel that our democracy could be under assault because every single person is operating on a different set of facts. is operating on different truths, which then leads to alternative realities. Truth is not the same for everyone anymore. In this talk, we will explore how to live and adapt in such a world. The first example I want to take is of the tech industry. Now, for those sitting at home, you probably have your phone right next to you like I do. I want you to unlock your phone and go on the most recent app. For me, it happens to be Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook, followed by YouTube, a close fourth. For you, it may be similar. Now, I'm going to critique some of these tools, but before that, I want you to know that I actually do appreciate them, because it's easy to lose sight of the fact that these apps make it very straightforward to communicate with families who live abroad and to find new networks to tap into. However, certain tools and analysis that are created today by these apps are eroding the social fabric of how our society works. Because all of these apps are competing for your attention. Your attention is their product, and your time is their profit. They're incentivized to keep you on there for as long as possible. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I actually saw a documentary. A lot of you at home may have already seen it. It's on Netflix. It's called The Social Dilemma, and a very apt name. And in that documentary, it talks about a special type of a marketplace. Now, being an investor, the marketplace I'm used to is the kind that trades ounces of gold and shares of Apple. This documentary, however, talks about the marketplace that we currently tap into trades human futures. Yes, human futures. The reason being, we curate our lives around this perceived sense of perfection around us. Why? Because these apps, these tools give us rewards in short-term signals. Unfortunately, we sometimes conflate these signals with the truth. But in reality, it's nothing more than fake, fragile fame. One of the ways to understand the reason behind this is to think about something you and I may have in common. I've got a bunch of books behind me. Chances are, if you own one of these books, we both go to the same page, you're going to see the same set of words that I am. An online version of this is probably Wikipedia. When you and I go on a page in Wikipedia, we see the same thing. However, the same cannot be said for my Instagram feed or your Facebook feed. Now, just imagine for a second, the Wikipedia people said, you know what? We're going to give each person a different definition. We're going to give each person a customized list or a customized page, depending on what their views are. And based on that, we're going to get paid by third-party people to do it. Now, straight away, what I look at is not going to be the same as what you look at. And that's what's happening right now. That's exactly what is happening to all of our social media feeds. It gives us our own version of reality. Each person, even in your family, could have their own version of facts. And this leads to alternative truth. Never thought I'd say that word, actually, alternative truth. Almost seems like a Trump thing to say, alternative news. Now, how do we combat this? I want to go to the past. I want to pick on a person from a past who has a complex personality with different nuances. This person is often misunderstood. But if we pay attention to his lifestyle, there are certain stories that could help us today. One such story is that he would maintain an inquisitive and an open mind. Throughout his student life, he showed this. Once upon a time, he was laying outside, reading away, studying underneath a tree. It was probably a warm summer's day because it was in India, not as dark as it is outside right now. And very casually going about his business. suddenly a scorpion came by. A scorpion stung his leg. Without falling to the fear of what happened, he immediately put antiseptic on it, wrapped it up, went about his normal business. His friends came by. Hey, you just got stung by a scorpion. Does it not hurt? And he simply said, it has stung my leg, not my head. This is a quality that is seen throughout his life. He would not get sidetracked by smaller things or other distractions. He had a tremendous pursuit of knowledge and objectivity. Both of these things served him well later in life, and I feel objectivity and the pursuit of knowledge can serve us well as well in the world that we live in today. Now, those sitting at home, you might say, Jeel, that's all fair and well. Fine, I can be objective. But what about the polarization that's going on in this world? We always have two opposing sides, often very strong, and sometimes they clash. Then bad things happen. And that's what leads to an assault on democracy. What about that? Well, I agree with you. I'll tell you why. Because not recognizing the truth can lead to two sides who don't hear each other. It can also lead to two sides who sometimes not only not hear each other, but they don't want to hear each other at all. And when they don't want to hear each other, they can pick up arms, sometimes in the same country, the same state, or the same neighborhood. An interesting fact here is, in the United States, if you look at stock prices of arms and guns stocks, they've gone up by more than 100% this year. And that is in a pandemic, by the way, when people are not meant to be going out and the rest of the world is probably in quarantine. Now, this true polarization is a plague of our society. And we're not being objective or constructive individuals. And that is fine. Not everyone has to be objective and constructive. But do we need to fight? Do we need to pick up arms just because you're on two different sides? I think not. And I want to revisit a story from the past again. Now, this person that I spoke about earlier, he would get along well with everyone. With adults, he would often discuss about politics and policies. But he would make sure no argument occurred that would make them enemies or cause someone to go away from him. He was even respected by people who did not like his ideas or his friends. For example, once going in a coach and going to a particular rally, he met a worker of an opposing party. So he met a communist worker who was volunteering at a rally. The two did not share ideologies, by the way. Nevertheless, this person from the past we're talking about has a very warm heart, and he became friends instantly with this volunteer. And through that friendship, they would debate policies, they would debate opposing sides, but never became enemies. Now, years later, many years later, they again met on a coach journey going to a similar destination. And our friend from this past promptly greeted this communist worker like a brother, open arms and everything. Now that seems shocking to hear today, given the polarized world we live in. But it tells us it's okay to have opposing views in the same family or neighborhood or the country. But at the end of the day, treating them like one of our own, just like how our friend treated his opposing person, is important. And that's the second quality that I want to discuss today, treating people as our own. If I was to go back to what I started with, disinformation and the age that we're living in, where truth has many different kinds, we have learned that, yes, people don't agree on what true is. We have also learned that it may not be their fault because it's just the fabric of society and the structure that we live in, and that's okay. And we've seen what happens when people don't agree and we can't navigate out of our problems. Now, does this mean that in a world of post-truth, us as humans are a threat to ourselves? For example, can the lack of truth and the polarization become an existential threat for mankind? Think about that for a second here. I think yes. I think yes. If alternative truth leads to mass chaos, outrage, incivility, lack of trust in between nations, lack of trust in between people, then yes, existential threat is real, 100%. Because if everybody's entitled to their own version of facts, there's no need to compromise. There's no need for people to come together. And that is what we're seeing. We need to have a shared understanding of reality. We need to have common values that makes people come together. This common ground that we're talking about, or a set of values, I think they can be extensive, but the two of them are just what I've described today. Pursuit of knowledge and objectivity, and treating everybody as your own. As for the person from our past, the person from the not too distant past, his name is Madhav Sadashiv Golwalkar, shortened to MS Golwalkar. Fondly known as Guruji, he was the second leader of RSS in India. From him, while being a complex personality, while being misunderstood sometimes, but from him we learn seeking knowledge is important, being objective is important, and overall, embracing everyone as your own is important. It is this common values that we share together that can help us propel into the future, that can stop mankind from becoming an existential threat to ourselves. And sometimes you must look to your past to guard your future. Namaste. Thank you very much.
Wow, excellent speech, Jeel. Thank you very much. Audience at home have been sending in lots of comments. So again, audience, please leave some more comments for Jeel. Let us know what you thought of that speech, and if you have any specific questions for him. Jeel, now that that speech is done, how do you feel? What's different?
I realize that I think every time you do the same speech, even if you practice it, it will always be a bit different. You know, because sometimes the emotions come through depending on the setting and how you feel. So I'm kind of get used to that, because even that was slightly different to maybe what I practiced a couple of days ago, which was different to what I practiced a couple of weeks ago. So I'm quite happy it's done. And but for some reason, I'm just still as excited. It's weird.
I know you have plenty of speeches in the tank, so we look forward to hearing more of them. And I remember when we were going through some of the Bias, you know, you were reeling out different topics. So, you know, different speakers have different challenges, and for you, it's about taking that super rich content and channeling it through into something that's effective, which I think you did very well just here. And when you watch back, you'll see all the comments we have on YouTube. So again, to those at home, there are a couple of questions coming in. I think the first off, what age range was this aimed at? What kind of people do you think would expect to learn something from a speech like this?
I think this one was particularly aimed at two generations, what I would call the Instagram generation, which is pretty much anyone above the age of 13 or 15, to up to 30. And then it was probably aimed at the slightly older generation, which is probably around 40 to 50. The reason being is those two sets of age ranges, you know, young adults and maybe middle-aged adults, you know, tend to be on the fence about a lot of things. And if sometimes when they're not on the fence, they seem to be on an extreme opposing side. So that's what this was aimed at, to open up the mindset a bit.
Yeah, I think all ages can learn from it. So online, a lot of comments coming in about 18 plus, 25 plus. So seems like you have a varied audience that appreciate the content. And I think the content you spoke of, it speaks aptly for that polarization of such views, you know, and how difficult it is to live with a new set of values or a rediscovered set of values. So I like especially the way you talked about, sort of summarized towards the end about the pursuit of knowledge and objectivity, and also treating people as your own. And you gave some apt examples of people that you have researched. Could you give me a living example of yourself? Is there something you do in your daily life or whatever that speaks to one of those values?
I think something that I've consciously started doing probably over the last year more or so is working on that objective part. So for example, nowadays Facebook, I mean, no one really uses it for what it was initially meant for, right? I mean, people kind of use it as news, or people use it to check out other people's photos, and then that's it, right? And then there's the occasional birthdays here and there. So what I realized was I used to get a lot of these news on Facebook, and it would always be in a similar political spectrum. It was always be like the same idea, and I would never get the other side of the idea. And I could see it every day, and I got fed up of it. And then in Instagram, it's similar things have started happening. So what I do on purpose now is to seek people of the opposing view, is to seek people who write different type of content and reach out and follow that, so that my feed can be a bit more mixed, so to speak. So that objectivity part, it's I think that's something you have to work on consciously. You have to consciously look at the other view, even if you don't like it. You have to.
Yeah, I totally get that. So you're just messing up the algorithm, so it's more difficult.
Oh, I love messing with Instagram's algorithm.
Well, I think you're messing up the algorithm. They probably have it predetermined. Jeel on Netflix, therefore he's going to do X, Y, Z. But no, fair enough. And I like the concept of looking at an opposing view. So any hurdle, any situation that we come through in life, there will always be more than one way of looking at it. And sometimes we catch on to our own view. We stay very sort of stubborn almost in what we think is the truth or the absolute truth, or what we commit to. Do you think there are any dangers of a topic like this, or trying to speak on such topics? Or did you feel anything?
When I was prepping for this kind of topic, I did feel that there could be a few dangers about this, right? But the ironic thing is that the dangers of speaking about something like this is actually what I'm addressing in the topic. What I'm addressing is, be objective. Fine. After being objective, if you disagree with me, still, I'm okay. Disagree with me, but we should still be friends at the end of the day. We should embrace each other as our own, right? So yes, there are dangers about discussing a topic like this, especially openly. However, I think if the audience at home sitting takes away the messages, then the dangers are mitigated.
Sure, fair comment. Okay, so I've got a question in from the audience. When you have such a fascinating topic and you've got a lot, super rich content about it, how do you make sure you keep into the time limit?
Okay, I'll tell you that. I'll let you in on a secret. Okay, the first time I did this speech, when I had my topic, content, and whatnot, and I timed myself, it was just me on my own. It was 22 minutes the first time I did it. It was 22 minutes. So I think yes, in any speech, if you're interested, you're automatically going to have loads of content. The way to stick to the time limit is to keep doing it again and again, and then take out things that are that don't contribute as much. You have to do a cost-benefit analysis. Benefit is, how much is this going to inspire a change in the audience, and the cost is how many seconds is this taking up from my speech. So it has to almost be a process that you have to do again.
Awesome. I like cost benefit analysis. So.
No, I'm an investor. I look at everything from that angle, right?
Sure. I think I did an A level in accounting, so I can talk about trading profit loss accounts. Another question we've got come in. How do you make sure that the stories and examples you give are relevant to your audience?
Yeah, I think, that's true, right? So here the two stories I picked, I mean, I could have picked any person from the past and, and tailored the speech correctly. So either the stories that you give, you have to make sure that your audience is going to be familiar with them, and you have to assume that from the beginning, Or you can do what I did, which is if you're going to have a wide audience, is to almost make the stories a bit anonymous and then do a reveal of who it was about at the end. And then that way, the people who knew the person have an appreciation for the person, and people who don't, Google the person. So you have to go about it two ways.
Awesome. So if there was one thing that you would like your audience to take away from this speech here today, what would you say that is?
The one thing would be objective and actively seek to be objective, right? Because as soon as you do that, the rest of the things will follow. Especially in the world that we're living in today, you have to.
Brilliant. That's some worldly advice there. Thank you very much. And we've got a question here that's a bit more about logistics, less about the content. Are there any specific challenges of speaking on virtual platforms? What would you say has been the difference in practicing this speech on stage to how you have done here today?
I'd say there are a few. If I was to address, say, two of them, one is you obviously need good internet, first of all, logistically speaking. So, you know, I during lockdown, like many others, I probably upgraded my internet. I'm sure some of you at home did. So that's logistically speaking. The second is the challenges are like you only see this much of me, right? Like you basically see from here to maybe my chest and sideways, that's it. In real life, when you're speaking on a stage, you can move around, you can see the whole body, so the body can talk for you. In a virtual platform, it's the most I can do is my hand, my shoulders, and my face. So it's a bit more tricky and difficult from a public speaking perspective.
Sure, totally understood. Any top tips that you would like to leave the audience for someone that's doing some type of preparation of their own? What advice could you give?
What advice? My top tips would be, number one would be to practice. So that way, earlier when you asked me what's one thing you found difficult, I found consciously practicing when somebody's not looking. So not just practice when other people are there, but practice when nobody's there, because that's when you have to self-motivate yourself. So I think that's one top tip, is to practice. The second thing is, don't lose sight of what the goal is. Remember, the goal is that you are speaking to inspire a change in someone. So you're speaking to inspire action. Never lose sight of what that is, because the moment you lose sight of that, you go too much into content, it gets a bit muddled up. So those two things.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And I think there's a couple more questions coming in from the audience.
Go for it.
We're going to move on, the switch gears just a little bit. So for everyone at home, thank you for the questions. Please have more coming in. And if we don't get a chance to answer them today, I'm sure Jeel will be able to record something and let us know. And that goes for the rest of the Samarops that we've had so far. You know, we've had the rest of the V2 cohort go through their Samarops through the month of November. Go onto our YouTube channel and have a look. You can also have a look at past content, some of the older speeches that have been done in the past. So what we're going to do now is we've got a special guest speaker, Dr. Sachinji Nanda. He completed his PhD of political philosophy at the University of Nottingham with a thesis in liberalism, now works in private equity, and more appropriately for the audience today, he's the national coordinator of Vichar Mantha and also a mentor on the Vani platform. Namaste, Sachinji, how are you doing?
Namaste, it's a real pleasure to be here. It was a great speech, Jeel. I enjoyed that very much.
Yeah, please elaborate. Elements of the speech do you think were great? And
you know, I think, you know, when you're constructing a speech, one of the hardest things to do is to inspire in a short amount of time. So you've got barely 10 minutes and your aim is to be, you know, you were so content rich. And so to be content rich in 10 minutes and still give enough, I suppose, intellectual or cerebral movement for people, right? So they actually change something, they actually go away and think about it, or they're inspired enough to go and read more or change a behavior, which I think what your speech was driven towards. It was excellent. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
If there were any things that you could recommend Jilji to maybe do differently next time.
Hold on, let me get my notepad. It might be a long list.
I think, look, I think he was up against it in the sense that it's online, right? And everything that Vani tries to do is so that you are on stage and in the public sphere. So I think he touched on that kind of all of a sudden, all of us, you're restricted to this little screen and you can't see the audience in front of you. I mean, you're staring into a hole effectively called the camera, and that's about it. So that can be a little bit unnerving. In terms of, I suppose, the only thing I would say is, that the challenge for Jeel always was the call to action at the end, because he's so content rich, we can all become mesmerized in the content and then forget what his real intention is, which is for us to actually go away and change something in how we consume information effectively. So that's always a danger that the speech was lurking to us, but he managed it ever so well. I thought it was a very good speech.
Yeah, great. And then maybe from a content side of things, values in a post-truth world. What are your thoughts on trying to address a topic like that, and maybe the way in which you should navigate the topic?
It's incredibly difficult, and it's very brave of Jeel to do so, right? Because when you're talking about post-truth, and Jeel used phrases like, effectively my truth, your truth, different realities. These things become so ambiguous and nebulous that you can just lose your audience if you're not careful. And so for Jeel to then kind of stitch it back up with the way in which he engaged with the audience, how he got us to look at our phones, how he told us some stories, these sorts of things help such a nebulous topic like truth to become more relevant to us. So I thought he did it marvelously well. It's a hugely risky sort of topic in so many ways, but he came through it, I think, rather well.
Georgie, any comments? Will there be a part 2? I know you have more to say on the topic.
I'm thinking of a part 3 at the moment. I think that there is obviously a lot to say on the topic, and there will be. Look, as our world progresses, it evolves. So yeah.
And maybe a question for both of you, really. What's the importance of speaking about such topics? Why must we prepare and do things like this? Georgie first.
Okay. Look, I think it's important to have an open dialogue in the world we live in. The reason it's important is because access to information has never been easier through your mobile phone, through your laptop, etc. And if you look at just the history of humans, right? I mean, right now, the average person or the average child probably consumes way more information than an equivalent 50 or 100 years ago. And because we are able to consume more information, it's important to be objective and to have an open dialogue on both sides of the fence.
Certainly, any thoughts?
Yeah, just to kind of couple that along, I think often there are many of us, Karikatas within the Hindu community at large, specifically, living in the West, maybe, in the UK even specifically, who actually have a lot to offer the wider society, but we often don't create. We end up becoming consumers of ideas rather than producers of ideas. And what Vani does, and what Jeel has just managed to do, is that he's produced content out there that others can now absorb, think, challenge, critique, mull over. And I think, this is what a dharmic voice ought to be like, right? Vani is trying to create authentic dharmic voices that will help us rethink, reimagine, and maybe bring a unharmonious world into a bit more harmony. So that's important.
Brilliant. Okay, so we look forward to more of Jeel and his harmonious voice, melodies of post-truth drama. So we're coming to the end, or almost at the end of this episode. So any questions, audience members at home, for both Jeel and Sachin, please submit them through now. Jeel, just before we let you go, any lasting thoughts, impressions, tips for audience at home, or for anyone trying to improve their public speaking skills that they have?
I think to improve your public speaking, you just have to do it. So either get out there, do it in front of your family, in front of your friends, sometimes in front of a mirror if you have to, right? Because unless you practice, you're not really going to be able to improve. That's one thing. And the second thing is, again, what I said before, which is you want to inspire a change, or you want to have a call to action in your audience.
Brilliant, thank you. And it's been great to watch you, obviously, when you first came in through the door and the first speech we recorded. I'm sure we'll have to put some of that content online at some point, but I think it speaks to what we've spoken earlier on today, right, about iterations. And you yourself said the speech was very different to how you delivered it even yesterday or the week before. So audience members at home, let's applaud Jeel for finishing off this Samarop. I'm sure we are going to see more of him. Thank you very much, Jeel.
Namaste.
See you soon. So, Sachinji, here we are at the end of the second cohort of Vani. So we set out on this challenge a little while ago. What do you think have been the main differences between doing it cohort 1 and with this second batch now that they've all done a speech?
I think the biggest thing has been, well, what's staring us right in the face, which is COVID, right? We would usually be doing these abhyasvargs, these training days and weekends in a hall where there's a stage, where there is miking, where there is audience, or and you're physically, as Jeel alluded to earlier, you're effectively using space and volume. Now all of a sudden you're kind of restricted to just a virtual screen in a virtual sort of environment, and so I think that's been a big challenge. Having said that, what I find has also happened consequently, because they're not having to focus so much on their body all of a sudden, they've become content rich. They've had to really practice their tone, their pitch, their pace, and of course, far more valuable content. So you can see that pros and cons in both groups coming through.
Yeah, I agree. I think because there's less of having to worry about mics and things like that, it squeezed out another talent or skill. So look, we face challenges. The show must go on. Evidently, we've managed to put these sessions on. So why? I mean, what is the need for us to move on? Why does the Hindu Samaj need to evolve in the art of communication, throughout Shaka Sangh, Vivid Kshetras?
I think, it was in 2016 where I think it dawned on the wider community that, you see, if we are born and brought up, and most of us will die on this island, right? So this is our home, and ultimately the Hindus are barely 2.5% of the population. We economically punch way above our weight. Academically, we punch way above our weight. And in every respect, we are a very progressive, forward-thinking, well-integrated community. And yet, it doesn't take a genius to say it or work it out that the Hindu voice is very, very quiet or meek indeed. Why is that? And one of the areas, which amongst many, but one of the areas which I think Vani has so bravely taken on, is that not enough Hindus generally, whether they're scholars or professionals or whatever, have very good oratory skills. The ability to communicate effectively, powerfully, with impact that causes real world change on the other side, we just don't have enough of that. And public speaking is just one facet of what it takes for a community to become vibrant and politically active. And by politically, I don't mean number 10 Downing Street and politics. I mean one's ability to influence one's environment, right? So Vani is effectively the platform since 2016, which was thought of, where, people who have got something to say ought to say it. But you ought to say it well, and you ought to say it with purpose and with impact. And, that's why I suppose you and I were instructed and given the opportunity to kind of build something like a Vani platform up, having been lucky enough in our lives, Sumit, you and I were lucky enough to be trained professionally to deliver and to speak. And I think no matter how good you are in terms of your content, your ideas, and even, you can have a gift of the gab, but I think everybody needs to be polished if you want to be impactful.
It's apt, and it's very true. I mean, you summed it up very well, but to take on topics of such, what kind of things do we need to be talking about to then influence society and make it more cohesive? What kind of topics do we need to get more comfortable with, or what narratives do we need to dissect through our own worlds that really show off those messages of harmony and peace and dharma?
I mean, look, I think Vani is a fantastic example of it. I mean, let's just quickly reflect, right? We've ran 4 sessions like this, 45 minutes long. On the first session, you had 2 people who spoke about the contributions of the Bharatiya culture to the globe, to humanity, right? Now, frankly, not enough Hindus in the West, in the UK, who have the knowledge maybe to speak about such things, have the ability to actually communicate effectively. And sadly, those who may have the ability to communicate often are not polished enough to do so, or they lack the content. So what Vani does is Vani is bringing people who have content, experience, a objectivity to them, and then giving them the means to communicate that to a wider audience, right? I mean, that was a great topic. Then the second topic was dharmic leadership. I mean, what could be more meaningful to our society than a topic like that, where we had 2 fantastic speakers, who so eloquently, again, content rich, described different facets of leadership in their own perspective, in their own ways. Again, real contribution to the realm of ideas, right? And then last week, of course, we had a really complex topic on destiny and free will and one's ability to shape one's life. And there, of course, she had to learn how to deal with technical glitches and technical problems that can happen to any of us at any moment. How does one psychologically, physically react to such situations? I mean, she handled it beautifully, didn't she? Absolutely wonderfully. So it just shows you what training can do. And then, of course, today we have Jeel, who spoke about something so subtle, so nebulous, and yet so relevant, again, from a very, very dharmic, authentically dharmic standpoint. So I think, these sorts of topics is what the world needs. And I would say, more the merrier, in terms of tackling the environment, tackling law and order, tackling the future of technology, responsible technology, food security, defense, democracy. Georgie touched on that today. These are real issues that the Hindu community needs to have a voice on. And I think it does have something to offer the world, offer the dialogue, but we need to be able to communicate it. And so I think this is very welcome.
Very well put. And to the audience at home, lots of comments coming in. So I think Sachinji's just given us a list of topics that would be worthwhile to speak about. And for anyone that's missed any of the Samarops that we had throughout November, Bharat's Contributions to the World by Sangeeta Chabaria and Pareshi Mistry, Dharmic Leadership by Ajay Sohal and Bansri Lakhani, Is Life Shaped by Actions or Destiny by Kirti Bhagat, and of course today we had Jeel Shah with Values in a Post-Truth World. So we're coming very close to the end now of this episode. Sanji, any passing comments for the audience? I mean, look, if I think about it out loud, the world is full with blogs, podcasts. We've talked about the appetite of more content. Is this the medium? Is this the way that people should be speaking about it? If there's someone at home that's got an idea and they've found a dharmic underpinning to it, what do you think that they could do? What are their next steps to maybe share that with the wider world? Or with
as I mentioned, there are many facets for a community to become influential. And certainly Vani the spoken word is one of the most powerful facets, and especially in an age of social media where something can go viral so quickly. It is definitely a very, very powerful tool to master, right? It's not for everyone, but it's certainly, for some people. Some people are great authors and writers, and of course, there's a whole program to learn to become writers as well out there, right? Called Tattva. So there are many facets. Vani covers one such facet, a very important facet. And what I would say to people is, look, join, get involved. And everybody who's done this program, they're not students, right? I mean, these people have families, they have careers, they're very successful at their careers, and yet they have to carve out time to refine this particular skill. And without refinement, it's always very, very difficult to be effective. And then that talent that one has, or that idea that one has, is in some sense wasted, right? And of course, every idea has four things that you need, right? Every idea to become common sense, any idea that becomes common sense has four things behind it, right? Number one is enough people. So enough people have to buy into that idea, have to be able to espouse that idea. Number two is time. Any idea to fully mature takes time. What Jeel spoke about has taken best part of 20 years to come about, this kind of postmodern, post-truth sort of world. Didn't come overnight. Number three is people. People, time, money is the third area, right? You need resources. We need our community and the elders in our community, those who are entrepreneurs in our community, those who have accumulated certain wealth in our community, to now recognize that, yes, with the Hindu community is incredibly philanthropic, right? It's built hospitals, schools, help the needy all over the world. But Hindus need to recognize that they also have to now back ideas. Those who do philanthropic work need to be able to now back ideas, back those people who have ideas, whether they be academics, whether they be speakers, whether they be politicians, whatever they may be, authors, writers, but ideas need money. And I think we desperately lack that. And I think that's a real big opportunity for the Hindu community now in the next 10 years to grow into. And the final thing is institutions. Vani is an institution, it's an academy. And hopefully it will grow into a prosperous, strong academy where maybe, instead of tens of people being trained, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, hundreds of people will be trained in how to be great orators. So these are the four elements that ideas need in order to become common sense. And, this is the challenge that the Hindu Samaj faces, and you're at the helm of it. So well done.
Brilliant. Lots of great anecdotes there. And I think for the audience at home, if you wish to know more, there's plenty of where this come from with the other Vivid Kshetras as well. We've called out Tattva as the place to learn how to write. Look at the other discussion platforms. If you're a student, get in touch with the National Hindu Student Forum. If you're looking for great content about the Hindu Samaj and some of the problems we're facing, go look at Vichar Manthan. So there's lots to learn. Thank you very much for your time, Sachinji. Thank you also for being on the Vani platform and greeting us here today. I will let you go as we close off today's Vani episode. So to the audience at home, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of the 4th out of 4 Vani episodes, where the second cohort, V2, have really brought the end of their beginning. And I keep telling them, there's plenty more speeches to come. There's lots more to get out of them. So to everyone listening at home, if you're at a Shaka or a Bal Gokulam or an NHSF or any Vivid Kshetra, anyone that's out there that needs a speaker, you need someone to come to your Bodik or your Charcha or your presentation evening or some philanthropic work that you're doing, then reach out to Vani. We have now a bank of speakers who have been trained. You've seen some of their great work here today. So use them. Let's amplify the voice of our community. If you're inspired by anything you've heard today, if you want to improve on your public speaking skills, then the first step is action. And that doesn't mean go find a video online that you want to learn about. Just pick up a camera, look into the mirror, ask your family members, can you just give me 2 minutes? I want to speak to you about this topic that I'm passionate about. We must discover what some of these dharmic topics, what some of these passions really are. As Sachinji and Jeelji alluded to earlier, we all have a story to share. Our community is punching above its weight in all aspects. So we must share those messages. We must record speeches, and we must let the world and the wider Samaj know what it's all about, to have some Vani, and to come out with something that's elaborate, beautiful, and has that dharmic underpinning to it. A couple of questions online about if there's going to be more. There will be a cohort 3 at some point in the future. Let's get over this pandemic. And listen, you don't need to be joining and coming online and doing those kind of sessions. You can, at home, start practicing how to become an effective speaker. Keep iterating, keep evolving, and keep speaking. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please be in touch, find us online, email us, drop some comments below. And I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible, if not physically, then virtually, at another Vani episode soon. Namaste. Good night.